Hello and welcome to the Guna Talk, back again with you guys for another show for the second big question episode, which is basically the spin-off of the Raw Reaction series, in which we look at a big question on a day in which there's not much going on. Although, saying that, there is going to be another show today, and that is the Match Reaction podcast, which is the usual Guna Talk podcast. I'm really happy to be joined today at about 8:30, 9 o'clock tonight, by French and by Tom and by Miami John as well. So tune in for that a little bit later on tonight, and make sure you're hitting that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Make sure you go check out a lot of our videos. We've been doing loads of stuff in the latter part of lockdown, it's fair to say. So there's loads of you that can go and check out loads of stuff that's available. But today we're here to talk about Matteo Guendouzi, because there's recent surfacing reports that the Frenchman is considering leaving, or has in fact even gone to the lengths of telling the club that he wants to leave. Now, he only signed for the club less than 2 years ago, of course, at the start of Unai Emery's tenure at the club. Was one of Sven Mislintat's signings, I believe. And for me, it's conflicting. There's two sides to this. There's one side that says, why on earth would we sell him? He's got loads of potential. He's young. He's already got into the first team at such a young age. He's confident. He's got technical skill. And then there's the other side, which is there's a clear attitude problem. There's been issues throughout his time at Arsenal. It's not the first time that something's gone wrong. I mean, within weeks, I think it was, of him signing, he was caught doing balloons in a nightclub. We've had issues on the pitch, the most recent thing being strangling Neil Maupay at the end of the Arsenal-Brighton game. And I just, for me, I'll give you my sort of decision at the end of the video. We're going to get some reaction from you guys as well in the chat box, but we're going to kind of build this around the idea of Arsenal's transfer strategy, which I know I've done to death. But this Guendouzi thing comes into it quite legitimately. Let's get up some of your comments before we go into this any further. LP13 TV, big up, mate. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hello, Zlatko. Avon Tillington, hair today, gone tomorrow with any luck. Some days I just want to wear a hat. I'm sorry, I like it. I know it's new. I know that this is completely not what you used to. I actually ordered another hat yesterday because there was one on sale on Tommy Hilfiger, so that's going to be coming soon, which I'm looking forward to. It's a lighter one, so it can blend in with other colours of my clothing palette, shall we say. That was the worst thing I've ever said. Let's get some more of your thoughts then. Aaron Letchford, one of our members. Thank you, Aaron, for tuning in and being one of our members. If you want to join Aaron as one of our members, and in July, you're going to be getting some exclusive content, some new videos, and also, if there's enough interest on it, I'm going to do some podcasts with members. So members will be able to get on the show and do a members podcast, which will be public for everyone to watch, and be getting some of their thoughts on the current Arsenal situation. So if you want to get involved, expert members are going to be getting access to that. So that's going to be really good as well. So Aaron Letchford, yes, I think we need to clear out these players. 3 years of developing our youth and bringing in young players. We are a selling club now and need to use that to build ourselves up again. And I think, Aaron, there's a clear reason why you remember this channel. You understand the rhetoric behind it. You understand how I feel about the club, and clearly know that that is the best thing for us to do. Arsenal are currently in a situation where they need to sell to invest. And to do that, we need to sign young players, develop them, and sell them on. We signed Guendouzi for less than 10 million quid. It was way less than 10 million quid, I think. And so if we were to able to get a reported 40 million euro fee for the guy, that is huge profit. And it puts you in the position where you can then reinvest that money into players like Szoboszlai, for instance, someone that is really highly rated, could come in at 25 million and end up being worth quadruple that in a few years' time, or even less than that with the way players appreciate these days. So for me, Aaron sums that up perfectly. One of our other members, Mr. J85, says, I'm open to selling Guendouzi as long as we reinvest the money on a proper midfield partner for Xhaka, which would strengthen us immediately. Interesting, Mr. J, that you want someone to partner Xhaka. A lot of people would like us to replace him, but I think you fall into the same school of thought as I do, that Xhaka is, whilst not the best midfielder in the world by far, but he's our best midfielder at the moment. And so we need to build by improving the players around him first, because if you replace Xhaka straight away and you keep the other players, then you're in a position now where you've still got the weaknesses, and you need to strengthen by replacing the weaker players first and then work your way up. So definitely I'll fall in line with what you are saying. Jamie Wallace says definitely sell him. For one, he is a troublemaker, and two, I don't even rate the guy. He never knows what he wants to do, completely overrated, and he thinks he's something he's not. Get rid ASAP. Well, that is a damning report there from Jamie. And parts of it I do definitely have empathy with. I think that the attitude is a big problem. For me, I called him petulant after the Brighton game. I said that his passion and is clear. There's a clear want and drive to do what's best, but it's misplaced and it's in the wrong place. And Arteta has now twice had to remind Guendouzi and take him out of the squad for disciplinary actions. And it's just not okay. And especially a player of his age now, he's not 16, 17 anymore, he's 20. And for a player of that age, you need to be developed and mature enough to act in the right way. If you want to play for Arsenal Football Club, then you need to behave in the correct and proper way. I don't agree with the school of thought that is we need more players like Guendouzi that would stand up for their teammates. And yeah, I like that. Like when there's little scuffles on the pitch, Guendouzi's like the first one in there, backing up his teammates. And I like that part of the attitude. That's fine. But when he goes too far and starts strangling guys, that's just not. It's just not acceptable. It's just not classy. It's not what the club's about in my mind. Moving further on, Taib says, Tom, do you think Arsenal will decline even further next season? Well, sticking to this school of thought, because what I like to do is obviously the questions. I know that people love to throw in a whole range of questions, but keeping them on topic is obviously key. So in terms of Guendouzi and a possible decline in Arsenal, if Arsenal don't do what they need to, which in my mind is to invest more heavily in youth players. I know that we have invested in young players. And I know that I think it was a good stat, like 7 of 11 players have been under 24. But I want to see 11 of 11 under 24. And I saw a tweet conversation that went on today saying about how Arsenal need to still invest in players in their prime. But the idea by investing in younger players is that you develop them so they hit their prime at Arsenal. Not buying players in their prime for massively inflated prices and then at which point you sign them to a deal that leaves them with no resale value. But bringing in someone like Guendouzi, developing him, either you keep him at the club into his prime, great, you've bought a player for 8 million quid and you've got them for the entirety of their career. Fantastic. You've paid them extra wages because they would gradually earn more money across different contracts, but they will be playing in their prime after we develop them. Yes, it takes a few years, but it's taken RB Leipzig quite a while to get into the position that they're in now, and they're able to do what they're able to do. So for me, that's the school of thought. That's the train that we need to be on. That's what we need to be doing. But also, alternatively to investing in youth, keep them at the club development, then they obviously peak and then eventually trough and then retire. You've also got a case where you buy young players and then sell them on for a profit to reinvest that money in other areas. And I think that's really part of what this Guendouzi thing is about. If Arsenal aren't going to decline, then they need to start following this model. Arsenal will continue to decline if they keep investing heavy amounts of money in players that are 27, 28, 29 and higher that have hardly any resale value. Now, I'm not saying that you can't invest anything in players of that ilk, but I'm saying that this is the wrong time to be doing it. We should be looking at investing money in young players now, and in 4, 5, 6 years' time, once those players have developed or we've sold players on, we've made profit and we're financially viable, then you can bring in 1, maybe 2 players that are in their prime and can really improve the squad. Like you look at the teams across the league, and the biggest and best teams invest in youth in a combination with investing in their more peak period players, and only when they're financially viable or they're lucky enough to have financial backing. The clubs that are in financial difficulties shouldn't be doing that, and it leads them down a dark path of just a deep dark pit of constantly exponentially losing money. And that's why this Guendouzi thing is so important, because either we need to keep him and develop him and have him for the entirety of his career, or we develop him like we have and sell him on for a profit and reinvest that money elsewhere into the club. So in the chat box, for those people that are watching, thank you ever so much for everyone that has been tuning in. What do you think we can get for Guendouzi? I want a figure. What do you think is an acceptable fee for Guendouzi in the current market, considering obviously the COVID-19 issues, and that will decrease his value because only certain amounts can be paid for by certain clubs. So in the chat, throw in a value. What would you like to see him sold for if you do want him sold at all? If you don't want him sold, tell me. Tell me that you don't want him sold. King says 45 million. Enrico reckons 35 million. So quite a gap there. 2 10 million part guesses in what we've got so far. MSM says 40 million plus a buyback clause. I mean, again, Guendouzi, I can't see the type of player that if we sell him would want to come back. One of our newer members, I believe, William, correct me if I'm wrong, mate. 40 to 50 million easy, says William Gustafsson. Avon Tillotson reckons 35 million euros. Just Being says 25 million. Colin, one of the good friends of the show, says 30 million pounds. Niall Healy says 40 million. Mr. J says anything 30 million or above they would take. Taib says 35 million. RY says don't sell him. Gaia says don't sell him. Boys, in the chat, please tell me your reasons. Why should we not sell Guendouzi? I'm really interested. As someone who personally would be more than okay with seeing him leave, I'm really interested in getting the alternative view. Tell me in the chat box, why should Arsenal not sell Guendouzi? What is the argument against it? Aaron Letchford, one of our members, who's been massive in this show already, 20 to 25 in the current COVID situation is realistic. I tend to agree that 25 million is probably the minimum. 20 million is just too low. 20 million is just too low for me. Gary Harding, another one of our members. Loads of members in today's chat. Really appreciate all you guys jumping in here. If you want to get priority with your comments, make sure you join up as a member. Gary Hardy, get that big sell-on clause. Again, that's another thing. If you can actually invest in a player, sell them on for big profit, and put a sell-on clause in that, so 2, 3 years down the line, they go on for an even bigger price, we get money from that. I mean, if you remember Ismail Benacha, I mean, I'm really sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He went from Empoli to AC Milan, and Arsenal made a decent fee off that last summer because of sell-on clauses. It's something that Arsenal need to deploy more. So let's see some of those arguments against selling Guendouzi in the chat. I've called some people out on this. I'd love to get the argument against it. Adam Stroud says he's got French international call-up. Surely that increases his fee as well. RY, here we go. I think because 1 or 2 bust-ups shouldn't mean we sell him. Can see him developing into a class player. And it's a solid argument, and I can see the potential as well. I can see that there's potential for him to become a really good, technically gifted centre midfielder. For me, though, it's not 1 or 2. That's the problem. It's more than 1 or 2. It's 3, 4, 5 things that have happened now. And if you can get a big fee for him, it gets a disruptive member of the group out, and you can possibly replace him with someone that's got a lot of ambition, the same ambition that I know a lot of the fans have and I have for this club. And that's what I'd more like to see, someone that's more ingrained with the culture and the class that maybe we represent Arsenal with more. Avon says, we don't have the right players to operate the midfield. We require to succeed. Selling Guendouzi will help us sort that out. And I think when you actually look at the type of player Guendouzi is, he carries the ball, he's technical, he's tenacious. And I feel like we've got that in Torreira to a higher level already, and he's only a few years older. And so if you were to sell Guendouzi and reinvest that money into someone that's more industrious, a more physical player, a destroyer, a younger Thomas Partey, I keep saying that, a younger Thomas Partey type player, I think that would definitely be more. Gaia, here we go. One of the other people that was against his sale. He has shown throughout the season that he has passion and skill to be a top midfielder if Arteta can coach him with his positioning. And again, another completely fair point. I see the argument of all this potential that's there. Arteta works really well with these young players, but clearly there's a bit of a breakdown between Arteta and Guendouzi right now. The other thing that you have to factor in is that actually, supposedly, if you believe these reports, Guendouzi is specifically asking for this possible move away. It's not the club possibly wanting to move him on, even though they might be open to it, but Guendouzi has supposedly been the one to come out and say, I would like to move on. Krish KR7 says, Torreira doesn't carry and dribble out. It's a good point. Definitely part of a game that Guendouzi has over Torreira, but more of the diminutive, smaller, deeper side of the midfield that Guendouzi does occupy. I think Torreira does that better. I think that if you add, say, a Thomas Partey style player that's industrious next to him that can also carry the ball out like Thomas Partey does, I think that balances things. You also have to consider that then you've got Saka in the midfield, which I'm really liking him playing as a central player rather than on the wing, although he does really well in both roles. I think that you've got the opportunity to play a midfielder with the two deeper side of things that would do that job. So that's why I think that it's okay to see Guendouzi leave and Torreira to be more focused upon in the midfield, if that makes sense. But I completely take your point on board. Gary Hardy, if he says he would like to leave and he has 2 years left on his contract, we have to sell now before he runs it down. And it's another example. With 2 years left on his deal, supposedly, this is the perfect time to try and make a sale. Zamir says, Gendo doesn't even start. Selling a backup for 40 million is great business. Barca, Juve, Real, Inter will have to all pay 40 million plus for Guendouzi. This could be a Nelka part 2 for us. No reason to sell if that's what Arteta wants. It's a big risk, obviously, putting it and making the comparison to Anelka, but I do take that point. Harry Robinson, I do not like Guendouzi's attitude. Plain and simple. Adam Stroud says, where do you realistically think he could go? Real or PSG level or a Leverkusen type level? If that's the thing, is that, well, how highly do you rate him? Because if he moves off to, say, Real Madrid and PSG, a lot of people would turn around and say, well, Arsenal have just sold a player to Real Madrid and PSG. Those top clubs that Arsenal would love to be on the same level as have just signed one of their players that they didn't want. Well, why didn't they want him? Maybe Arsenal need more of those players that are of that level. And I see that argument, but those clubs, Real Madrid and PSG, are notorious for signing some players that they shouldn't have. And if Arsenal can manipulate that market and use that to their advantage to get a good fee, then fair enough. Then fair enough completely. Marlon Murray says we need to sell Guendouzi and other fringe players and buy 3 world-class players, a CDM, a centre of defence, and a cam. You're picking out the obvious there, mate. We definitely do need those types of players in our team. We need a centre defensive, a centre back is what I would call them. We need a centre back for sure. We need a defensive midfielder or a more deeper centre midfielder. They are different roles. And then a cam to replace, hopefully, an outgoing Mesut Ozil. Corey says, if Madrid are interested, I would take Isco in a swap. I would have taken him 2 years ago, mate, or possibly even a year ago, but it's just not the same. And he's at the age now where, again, you'd be signing someone with barely any resale value. I mean, if you're going to go to Real Madrid and say, here's Guendouzi, I'll be like, can I have Asensio, please? And that's not, but it is bias. It's complete bias. I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's the age and profile of the player that you need to look at personally. Asensio, a Rodrigo, those guys. Okay, that's Rodrigo, the Brazilian, not the Spaniard at Valencia that we get linked to every year and shouldn't sign. Harry Robinson says, I think we could get around 35 million for Guendouzi. We're definitely selling for somebody like Aouar or Toussaint. I think Toussaint... Am I right in saying Toussaint's gone to Hertha Berlin? I might be right in that. Please tell me if I am. But Aouar, that's how you pronounce it, at Lyon, really, really solid. Really, really solid. Aaron Letchford says, who would you sell this summer, Tom? It's a good question. Maybe it's one worth a video. But off the top of my head, I'll be looking at moving on. And to be fair, if you were watching on Twitter, in my frustration of Arsenal's transfer plight, I started up an Arsenal career mode and was doing a thread of it. And I sold in the first season Mustafi, Aubameyang. Who else did we sell? Socrates, David Luiz. We signed David Luiz to a new deal and then sold him. That was quite funny. Who else have we got rid of? Granit Xhaka I sold. I sold so many players. But it ended up being a really nice team in the end. We've got Leroy Sané taking advantage of that sale. Would never happen in real life, but we managed to get him for like 70-odd million. So there's a lot of players that I'd get rid of that I think are reflected in that. But it's just it's who's going to buy them. It's like you can sit there on FIFA. That's why I hate it when people, I don't know, I just have. I hate when people make comparisons to FIFA because they've sat there on career mode and been like, oh, Liverpool have come in for Lacazette, which would never happen in real life. So it's who's actually going to stump up the money. I don't know. I really, really don't know. Alvan says, Tom, be honest. If we sell Guendouzi and get the money to buy Partey and Szoboszlai, would you take it? Yeah, of course I'd take it. Because I think that I've sort of bought into this now that it's inevitable that we're going to sign Partey. And I've maintained throughout this is that I've said Partey is a quality player that would transform our midfield. I just don't think timing-wise Arsenal could afford to do it. And down the line, it could have a negative effect. If it means that we transform ourselves into a team that competes again, then that's a different argument. And we can maybe qualify for the Champions League again with a transformative midfielder like Partey. And then we're able to actually do more investment in youth. But if you add Szoboszlai to that, on top of what we've got, then I think it's an absolute no-brainer. Because for me, if you look at a midfield of Partey, Torreira or Xhaka, and Szoboszlai within it as well, I think you've got so much balance there and so much creativity and so much like industriousness and dynamism and pure defensive style players as well that can really stick in a tackle and do a good job. A midfield is of Szoboszlai, Partey, and one of either Torreira or Xhaka, I think is really well balanced and could do really, really well for the club if they do it in the right way. I think then you need to go in and invest in obviously the defensive area. We've got Saliba coming in. Would you guys be interested in doing like a video of how Arsenal could line up next season? That might be one to do where we do the graphics for the predictions. That might be one to do for tomorrow possibly, but we'll have to see because I'm out for most of tomorrow. But there's going to be a preview of the Sheffield United game up on the channel. So please make sure you've clicked the notification button so you get that. Also, I should say, because Ryan Kirkpatrick, who is... he's a long-time listener to the show, even though he's a Liverpool fan, loves coming in here, probably for his own pleasure and seeing Arsenal's plight. But congratulations, Ryan. Absolutely fair play to Liverpool. They deserve to win the title. Didn't do it as an invincible side, thank God. Watford did us a favour there, but fair play to Liverpool. It's as I tweeted out, it's absolutely mesmerising watching Liverpool play. I'm so envious of watching Liverpool play. So Ryan, long-time listener of the show, congratulations, mate. Congratulations. Maximus says, I'd sell Guendouzi for a packet of crisps. I think he's worth a bit more than that, mate. I think you're doing him a bit dirty there. Connor says, no, it's pointless. We will sign Cahill and we'll sign Gervinho back again. I mean, Connor, mate, thank you for tuning in, by the way, Conor McGregor, big fan. But in terms of that, I think that you can hope for more than just those two, personally, if we're thinking right. Now, before we wrap up, again, big reminder, 8:30. I'm going to try and push for an 8:30 record if the boys are up for it. Otherwise, it will be 9 o'clock tonight, UK time. So make sure you check your time zones if you're not in the UK. I'll be on with French and with Tom and with John to break down yesterday's win over Southampton, a look ahead to the Sheffield United game, and obviously a little bit more chat about Guendouzi and the Ozil, or Mesut Poppins, as he's being called at the moment, which was brilliant seeing him with an umbrella. I mean, 350 grand to sit with a parasol. I mean, what an unbelievable life. What an unbelievable life. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have, please drop a like on the video. Please suggest some big questions that we could look at. So I really, really appreciate that as well. But other than that, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you, as it always is. Thank you to the members that have been tuning in as well. There was loads of members in today. And again, if you'd like the opportunity to be a member, if you'd like the opportunity to come on the show in an expert members podcast starting in July, September, August time, if there's enough interest in it, then please make sure you not only sign up as a member, but you send over a DM on Twitter at the Gooner Talk TV. But we'll speak to you soon this evening for the podcast. And as always, up the Arsenal.